Think for a second about, how often you rely entirely on a digital readout to tell you what's real.
Oh, all the time.
Right? Like if your GPS says a road doesn't exist, you probably just assume it's a dead end. You trust the screen over the actual landscape right in front of you.
Yeah, definitely. We're wired for it at this point.
Exactly. But what happens when that screen is an ultra-advanced tactical AI and the landscape is this hostile, high-stakes combat zone? Welcome to today's deep dive. We are jumping into this fascinating, highly detailed, fictional document. It's titled Omens, Foretold, Chapter 12, Part 3. Aneurysmics, a strategical pivot.
Quite a mouthful of title.
It really is. And right off the bat, the metadata of this source is just a puzzle. The narrative details these events from April 1994, but the archive discovery date is March 2026.
Yeah, it reads like a transmission from a timeline that's just adjacent to our own. It operates as this masterclass in asymmetrical tactical combat, but then, and this is the wild part, it smuggles in this profoundly surreal philosophical argument about destiny and free will.
It really does.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to just deconstruct that exact intersection, right?
Yeah.
That place where gritty human intuition collides with cybernetic warfare.
Yeah.
And this whole concept of the illusion of choice.
Let's do it.
And the text really drops you right into the deep end to make its point. We open on our protagonist, a man named Benedictus, and he is at the tail end of this brutal, close-quarters physical struggle.
Yeah, it's a very intense opening scene.
Right. So he subdues this enemy combatant on the floor of a communications hub. He, wipes a bloody knife on the man's shirt and then systematically just neutralizes the room like he's cutting circuitry and yanking lines.
The physical reality of the scene is just incredibly stark. Benedictus then hogties the man using zip ties, and he gags him with this very highly specific item. It's a royal purple bandana featuring a gold fleur-de-lis pattern.
Such a specific detail.
It is. It's this vivid, almost cinematic anchor in a room that's just full of severed wires and cold calculations.
Which, that sets up this jarring internal contradiction for me. Because in the middle of this hyper-violent, calculated takedown, Benedictus describes himself in the text as a monk, not a cowboy.
Right, which is just what's fascinating here is that self-assessment really forces us to reevaluate everything we're watching him do.
We usually associate monks with peace, right?
Exactly. But for Benedictus, the monastic identity seems to be entirely about the absence of ego. He operates with this terrifying precision because his actions are completely divorced from anger or malice or personal glory.
Okay, that makes sense. And that brings us to the core dynamic driving this entire operation, which is this bizarre partnership between this human monk and his recon unit, Damont.
Yes, this is where it gets really interesting.
To understand the stakes here, we really have to look at how these two process the world differently. Because Benedictus, he's flesh and bone. After the fight, he has to call for a 30-minute break.
Yeah, he's physically spent.
Right. He's sweating, he's bleeding, he is actively dealing with the physiological tax of an adrenaline dump.
While Benedictus manages that human exhaustion, Damont, who the text implies is this highly advanced AI or maybe a fully synthetic cyborg unit, Damont doesn't require a single second to recover.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Damont immediately begins the first leg of their next objective, flawlessly calculating and scanning this 600-meter radius on a north-northwest to north-northeast arc.
It's like, think of it like a master chess player, physically standing on the life-size board, right, getting muddy and tired while their earpiece is hooked up to an unfeeling supercomputer.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks. The machine is tirelessly crunching millions of micro-adjustments and probabilities per second, but the human is the only one who can actually feel the friction of the real world.
Exactly. The machine maps the theoretical geometry of the battlefield, while the human manages the messy physical reality.
Okay, but I do want to push back on this Benedictus guy for a second, though. Let's unpack this. I really struggle with his monk label when I look at the actual math he's doing in his head. Well, while he's catching his breath, he runs this super cold internal inventory. 77 minutes elapsed. 3 enemies dead, 2 left alive. And he's actively planning to hunt down 3 more communication exchanges.
All right.
How does a supposedly spiritual identity survive that kind of black ops body count?
Well, the text provides a pretty chilling answer to that, actually. Benedictus views both himself and Damont merely as pawns in a larger game.
Just pawns.
Yeah, just pawns. The distinction between human and machine, or, between the one holding the knife and the one calculating the radar arc, it's a moot point to him.
Wow.
A pawn doesn't harbor malice toward the piece it removes from the board, right? It just occupies the space it was moved to. It's a strictly utilitarian, totally detached perspective on the violence.
That is dark. But, okay, so this flawless synergy between human instinct and machine processing it actually exposes a massive vulnerability in how we rely on technology.
Oh, absolutely. This is the big turning point.
Right. Arguably the most crucial turning point in the whole text. So they're moving toward their next objective, and they come across this cut in the landscape, overgrown with brush and weeds. And sitting right there in the dirt is a set of physical railroad tracks.
And this is where Benedictus acts on pure human observation. He walks 10 meters down the line, studies the ground, and he spots chunks of fresh coal.
Right, along with other rock minerals and ores.
Exactly.
So his physical senses scream that this is an active freight line. He's literally standing on it. He can see the disturbed earth.
The physical proof is undeniable.
So he asks Damont, this ultra-advanced AI, to run a deep digital search on the line. Find the schedules, the ownership records, the destination terminals.
And Damont finds absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
To the digital realm, this massive piece of infrastructure simply does not exist.
Here's where it gets really interesting, right? Because how is it possible that Damont is completely blind to physical infrastructure until they literally trip over it?
Well, it highlights the ultimate blind spot of artificial intelligence. Damont only knows what is recorded, what is transmitted, what leaves a digital footprint. If it isn't in a database somewhere, the AI cannot factor it into its tactical geometry.
That is wild when you think about it in the context of our own lives.
Oh, for sure.
We're so conditioned to believe the data over our own eyes. If Damont were operating alone, it would have categorized that terrain as empty brush and just moved on. It would be completely blind to an active supply line.
Right. And you have to ask, why would a heavily used railroad be completely scrubbed from the digital world?
Because it's a secret, right?
Exactly. The absence of data is the data. For Benedictus, Damont's failure to find records is actually the most valuable piece of intelligence he could ever receive.
Ah, I see.
The only reason to painstakingly erase a physical supply line from all digital networks is if it leads directly to the enemy's highly secured central hub in the northern sector.
It's security through total digital erasure. This ghost train is a direct artery into the enemy's heart. And if Benedictus hadn't been there to physically notice a rock of coal in the weeds, they would have walked right past it. Human intuition has to override the digital void.
But, finding the enemy's hidden artery is only half the problem here, because that physical discovery suddenly drastically accelerates their timeline. It forces them to pivot.
Right, the strategical pivot.
Yes, and this is where the human-machine partnership is pushed to its absolute technical limits through this crazy radio interception.
Man, the text gets incredibly granular here with the tactical jargon. I kind of geeked out over it, but I want to make sure we actually understand the mechanics of what they're pulling off.
Sure, let's break it down.
Okay, so Damont detects unusual radio traffic, 15 vehicles moving southeast, currently drawing enemy fire. And Benedictus asks Damont if he has SDR mods, which are software-defined radio modifications.
Right.
Damont confirms he does. So what is actually happening when they initiate this?
To put it simply, traditional radios rely on fixed physical hardware to tune into specific frequencies. But software-defined radio, or SDR, it replaces that physical hardware with software.
Okay.
So it allows Damont to instantly adapt and listen across a massive spectrum of frequencies simultaneously. Benedictus actually quips in the text, you can thank Ulrich L. Rode for that.
Oh, a nice little historical nod.
Yeah, nodding to the real-world pioneer who revolutionized how we process microwave and radio frequencies digitally.
That makes a lot of sense. So Damont isn't just turning a dial, he's rewriting his own receiver on the fly.
Precisely.
Then Benedictus orders him to use a Fourier waterfall and verify the signal hopping. What exactly is a Fourier waterfall?
Okay, imagine watching a digital rainstorm on a screen where every single drop represents a hidden radio signal.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
A Fourier waterfall is a visual map of the radio frequency spectrum over time. It allows Damont to literally see the invisible enemy communications cascading down the spectrum.
Wow.
And they use this to lock onto a radio group that's using SINSCARs.
All right, and SINCARs, that's a military communication system built around frequency hopping, isn't it?
Yes. Exactly. And that hopping is what makes it so difficult for an AI to crack on the fly. It's like a high-speed game of musical chairs where only the intended players know the music.
Well, that's a good way to put it.
The radio signal jumps across hundreds of different frequencies every single second in a seemingly random pattern. And when you add C communications security encryption on top of that, it should be totally impenetrable.
But Damont actually manages to build a table, crack the pattern, and track them across this highly specific coordinated web of frequencies.
He does.
They isolate single sideband AM and 72 megahertz FM in the air, along with 446 megahertz and 1705 kilohertz AM on the ground.
Which is huge because that wide spread of frequencies tells us this is a multi-domain operation.
Oh, right, air and ground.
Yeah. This unknown third-party force is coordinating ground troops and air support simultaneously. And through this waterfall of data, Damont calculates that the main enemy forces are converging on this third party.
Right, with an estimated time of arrival of 2 hours and 17 minutes.
Exactly.
So this sets up the event that the entire file is named after the strategical pivot, because Benedictus realizes this rebel force is unintentionally running a massive decoy for him.
Right, they're drawing the enemy's resources away.
Leaving the northern sector, where that ghost train leads, momentarily exposed.
It's this fleeting tactical window.
Yeah.
So Benedictus instructs Damont to hone in on the rebels' secure ground channel and transmit a highly classified warning.
He gives them the enemy's ETA.
Yep. He orders them to go dark, obscure all reflective surfaces, and relocate to a set of coordinates exactly 1/2 mile east of their current position for a parley.
Okay, I really have to stop and question Benedictus's judgment here.
It's definitely a bold move.
I mean, isn't this an incredibly reckless move? We just established his monastic, detached precision. But stepping into this parley seems insane.
Why do you say that?
Well, earlier in the text, Benedictus realizes that the guy he fought in the alley, the one he left tied up with the purple bandana, was likely one of these very rebels. They attacked him by mistake, thinking he was the enemy.
Right, this raises an important question. He essentially neutralized a member of their own team.
Exactly. And now he's just going to stroll a half-mile down the road, expose his position to a heavily armed militia that has already tried to kill him once, and ask to team up.
It sounds crazy, I know.
It sounds like a death wish. Why surrender his stealth advantage like that?
Because of the cold, undeniable math of the northern sector. Benedictus knows that the ghost train line leads to 3 remaining main communication exchanges.
Okay.
If he attacks one, the network will instantly route around the damage, and the sector will go into full lockdown. The window will close permanently.
Ah, so he has to hit all 3 simultaneously to cause a systemic failure.
Precisely. And he and Damont simply cannot be in 3 places at once. He desperately requires manpower, human bodies.
So it's not a choice, it's a necessity.
Exactly. This isn't some diplomatic outreach. It is a calculated gamble based purely on a logic of shared enemies. He needs pawns willing to absorb the risk of a parallel attack.
Wow. And that desperate necessity leads to the climax of the narrative, which honestly completely shattered my expectations of what this document is actually about.
It takes quite a turn.
It really does. As Benedictus sets up this wildly dangerous meeting, the text shifts from gritty military realism into this surreal exploration of determinism and the illusion of choice.
Yeah. The setup for the meeting is incredibly tense. Benedictus actually sends Damont away.
He separates from his AI.
He does. He commands the AI to stay put, run a passive scan for life signatures in a 5-mile radius, sort them mathematically into groups of 5, and just go completely silent.
So the human is entirely isolated from the machine. That is terrifying.
Totally alone.
So Benedictus takes cover in the brush near the coordinates. He hears the rumble of motorbikes. A cloud of dust rolls in as 24 rebels arrive.
Heavily armed rebels.
Right. The core leadership, 4 individuals, dismount and advance to within 30 feet of his position. And they all draw pistols. They are aiming directly at the brush where he's hiding.
And Benedictus does the unthinkable here. He takes a breath, stands up, leaves his cover entirely, and just walks out into the open dirt road to face down 4 drawn weapons.
The text actually describes it as his fake it, make it, or break it moment. But his internal psychological state in this moment is staggering. Like he isn't panicking. He isn't relying on adrenaline at all.
No, he is perfectly calm. And it's because of a deeply ingrained philosophical belief. The text explicitly states that Benedictus operates with a potent, constant feeling that his victory is assured, quote, no matter what decisions and actions he thinks he is making of his own accord.
So what does this all mean for him in that moment? Does he just have supreme tactical arrogance because he's survived so many close calls in the past?
It goes much deeper than arrogance. It's a literal experience of determinism. He acknowledges that if he subscribed to surrealism, he might brush this feeling off as a dream state.
Right.
But to him, it doesn't feel like a dream. It feels like a constant fact. The timeline is already written, and he is just moving through the motions of an inevitable victory.
Man, that fundamentally changes how we view his strategical pivot. Because if the outcome is already a constant fact, does his choice to team up with the rebels even matter?
That is the million-dollar question.
And that question's brilliantly addressed in the appendix of the document. The narrative portion just cuts off with a "to be continued." But it's immediately followed by a poem, which is also titled A Strategical Pivot.
Yeah, and this poem acts as a philosophical key to the entire deep dive. It reframes everything from the perspective of an inevitable victor, or perhaps destiny itself, directly taunting Benedictus.
Oh, I love that interpretation.
Let's look at the third verse. It says, tuned frequencies change the path, gained alliance change the force, a brief glitch in time's sonar, changes made stay the same course.
A brief glitch in time's sonar. That is just such a haunting line to me, because he thinks that intercepting the radio frequencies and orchestrating this incredibly dangerous alliance is this massive game-changing assertion of his own free will.
He thinks he's outsmarting the board.
Exactly.
But the poem suggests his grand pivot is nothing more than a momentary blip that ultimately just corrects back to the predetermined path. Changes made stay the same course.
Wow.
And the chorus doubles down on this futility too. It says, this carries no weight, no meaning to bear, no change to our fate, modified sometime, nobody does care, won't stop on this dime.
It casts the entire mission in a totally different light, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we watched him meticulously track elapsed time and body counts and hidden railroads. We watched him utilize Fourier waterfalls to crack encryption and change his tactics.
We did.
But the poem implies that all of that effort, all of that brilliant human intuition is just the illusion of choice.
The final verse uses a phrase that really cements this, I think. It says, the cannons are set against you, but reality remains an unhindered reality. It says, your preparations won't help. We'll be at your gate quite soon. No deterrence will stop us, remember. All hours, high noon.
It's just a staggering journey to take the listener on, because we started in the mud, right? With the gritty, visceral reality of a monk tying someone up with zip ties.
Yeah, very grounded.
And then we moved through the technical limitations of advanced AI, discovering how easily a physical ghost train can just hide in a digital void. We unpacked the complex mechanics of radio interception to execute this masterstroke tactical pivot.
And we finally arrive at this macro-philosophical ceiling. It forces you to ask, is Benedictus the master chess player, utilizing both his human intuition and his digital machine to outwit his opponent?
Right.
Or is he just a pawn, exactly as he himself suggested, just moving along predetermined squares in a war that was decided before he even picked up the knife?
The final image we are left with perfectly encapsulates that exact tension. On one side, you have Damont, the flawless digital machine, hidden in the brush, methodically sorting biological life signatures into these sterile mathematical groups of 5. Pure, cold logic.
And on the other side, you have Benedictus, the flesh and blood monk, stepping out onto a dirt road, completely exposed to the barrels of drawn pistols.
Yeah.
He steps into the crosshairs, not because he has a better tactical algorithm, but because he relies entirely on the unexplainable factual certainty of his own predetermined success. He acts because he believes in an unhindered reality.
Which leaves us with a truly fascinating thought experiment for you to ponder long after we sign off today. The tech uses determinism to explain a soldier's calm in the face of death. But let's apply that to your reality.
I like where this is going.
If you woke up tomorrow with the absolute factual certainty that you could not fail that victory and whatever path you chose was simply an unhindered reality, how would that change the very next decision you make?
It's a heavy question.
Would that absolute certainty make you dangerously reckless, stepping out in front of proverbial drawn pistols because you know you'll survive? Or would that sudden lack of fear finally free you to see the hidden paths, the fresh coal in the brush that have been right in front of you the entire time?